I now call for the Leader of the House to move the motion. Leader of the House, Benny Munt.
I beg to move the motion in my name. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with convention, as Leader of the House, I have brought forward this motion at the earliest opportunity to allow members to take a decision on the committee's recommendation. It is for members of this House to, in accordance with the principle of exclusive cognizance, investigate matters of privilege in this place, and the findings being debated here are those of the Privileges Committee. The Government respects these important constitutional principles, and that is why we have facilitated today's debate. The Privileges Committee exists to defend our rights and privileges in this place. Parliamentary privilege refers to the range of freedoms and protections each House needs to allow them to perform their functions effectively and without outside interference. The right of each House to control its own proceedings and affairs is a fundamental aspect of privilege. Without such freedoms and protections, our ability to carry out our duties will be diminished, and if we do not enforce them, they risk being rendered meaningless. A breach of privilege, that is, interfering with one of the unique rights and powers of Parliament, is punishable by Parliament. Each House also claims the right to punish contempt, which Erskine May defines as any act or omission which obstructs or impedes either House of Parliament in the performance of its functions, or which obstructs or impedes any member or officer of such House in the discharge of their duty, or which has a tendency, directly or indirectly, to produce such results. These rules are obligations we have to one another, to this place, and those that sent us here. They are also obligations we have to future generations that will sit in this place too. Mr. Speaker, on the 21st of April 2022, this House agreed to the resolution and order that established this inquiry from the Committee of Privileges. The committee membership was established again with agreement from the House. The committee selected its chairman and the House approved them. And it commenced its consideration of this matter on the 29th of June 2022 and published its report on the 15th of this month. The motion before us today is not only votable but is amendable, and no amendments have been tabled against the motion today. The committee's report found that Mr. Johnson deliberately misled the House and the committee, and in doing so committed a serious contempt. It also found that Mr. Johnson breached confidence, undermined the democratic process of this House, and was complicit in a campaign of abuse and attempted intimidation of the committee. I will in shortly. It is for members to decide whether these findings, conclusions and sanctions they propose are correct and reasonable, and that is the question in front of us today. I give way.
I'm very grateful to her for giving way, and she referred there to the evidence. It's important that people who maybe don't have the report in front of them understand that the depth of evidence that the committee looked at, visiting number 10 Downing Street, looking at evidence supplied by the government, emails, WhatsApp messages, photographs, conducting many hours of interviews. Does she agree that those who haven't had all that evidence, who haven't done all those interviews, shouldn't presume to say that the committee were wrong when the committee did that hard work on our behalf?
Say to the honourable gentleman is that we all owe the committee a debt of gratitude to the work that they have done on our instruction, but it is for members to decide whether their conclusions are correct or not. I give way to the Honourable.
I thank the Leader of the House for giving way, and I've listened very carefully, but I wonder if she could confirm whether or not she will be voting in support of the motion in her own name. I mean, because a couple of years ago, when I had a previous Shadow Leader of the House in front of me, he then brought forward a motion which he then effectively voted against. Can she confirm that she will be voting in support of the motion in her name tonight?
Again, this is as the member for Portsmouth North, I will be voting to support the committee's report and recommendations. But all members need to make up their own minds, and others should leave them alone to do so. I think it would be helpful, Mr. Speaker, I'm not intending on detaining the House for long, but I think it would be helpful to briefly address some false assumptions colleagues may be relying upon. Firstly, this process has not determined who gets to sit in the House of Commons. In vacating his seat, Mr Johnson has removed the right of his constituents to retain him as their Member of Parliament if they wish to do so. Secondly, it has been suggested that the government is wrong to give the House time to consider the report and that it is to its detriment that it has done so. No. Not to allow the Commons to vote on a report it had commissioned from one of its committees to produce would be wrong, just as it would be wrong to whip any member on such matter. This is the work of Parliament, and it is right that government gives precedence to matters of privilege. Governments are scrutinised and held in check by Parliament. These important balances are a strength to our political system. A government's ambition may well be limited by Parliament, but in being so, they are not diminished. It is when governments seek to interfere with the rights and privileges of this House that it is diminished. And thirdly, that the government, that the government should have stopped the work of the Privileges Committee or should stop its future planned work. No, these are matters for the House. The House can at any time halt or direct the work of the Privileges Committee. It is doing such work because the House has directed it, and it is in this House's interests that it has such a committee and that members should wish to serve upon it. I give way to the Honourable.
Very grateful to the Right Honourable Lady in giving way on that point. And 7 years ago, during the Brexit referendum, the former member for Uxbridge and South Ruislip pledged to restore parliamentary sovereignty. Last week, he utterly defiled that, what the committee described as an attack on our democratic institutions. The Privileges Committee found him to have lied over and over again. While the committee has jurisdiction limited to statements made within this chamber, my party has consistently advocated for a law against the peddling of political falsehoods in public life. Does she agree with me that the time has come to enshrine in law the need for all politicians to respect the very concept of the truth?
Well, the Honourable Lady brings me to my closing remarks, which is why what we do this afternoon, whichever way we decide to vote or not to vote, why it matters. The real-world consequences of a vote today may seem to come down to whether the former member for Uxbridge has a pass to the estate. And our constituents may not appreciate why we are focused on contempt towards the House, as opposed to contempts they may feel have been made against them. The lockdown breaches themselves, which grate hard with those who sacrifice so much to keep us all safe, or for others, the creation of a culture relaxed about the need to lift restrictions, or for others on wider issues such as the debasement of our honours system. But we would be wrong to think there is no meaningful consequence to our actions this afternoon. The work of the Privileges Committee in producing this report before us today does not just examine the conduct of a former colleague. Their work has also sought to defend our rights and privileges in this place. The right not to be misled, the right not to be abused in carrying out our duties. As a consequence, they have also defended the rights of those that sent us here and those we serve, and I thank the committee and its staff for their service. This matters because the integrity of our institutions matter, and the respect and trust afforded to them matters. This has real-world consequences for the accountability of members of Parliament to each other and the members of the public they represent. Today, all members should do what they think is right, and others should leave them alone to do so.